Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Sarah van Grenen, aka Mr. VG, and we are now at the last video of the functions series, looking at specifically the fourth type of function, which is the exponential function. Now, you will see that in most of the exams, exponential functions in grade 11, you know what? It's not really asked in so much detail as the hyperbola or the straight line or the parabola. The reason for that being is that we can't really do too much with exponential graphs. But in grade 12, we are going to take exponential graphs to inverses and wada. And then we are going to have log functions which flow out of exponential functions. So in grade 12, exponential functions kind of takes on this whole new meaning. So this is Mr. VG, and I'm excited to have this opportunity to speak to you today about exponential graphs. So let's look at this question 8. Okay. This question 8 it comes from the Gauteng Department of Education paper of 2020. And I want you to try this yourself. So when we look at this, this is actually a very, very easy question. Therefore, of course, I'm going to make it interesting later on in the video. But let's first analyze. First of all, that -6 is the asymptote, but not just -6, y equal to -6. So that is my horizontal asymptote, y equal to -6. Now, what does the 3 and the 2 tell me? It has to do with the form of the graph. The 3 is a positive, therefore, my function is going to be above my asymptote. The 2 is greater than 1, therefore it's going to diverge. So as we go left to right, my graph is going to go away from my asymptote. That's important, away from. Now, this is not, can I say, cardinal important, like super important knowledge, but you have to know it, okay? Because later on you'll also see in the next question that I pulled out of another question paper, you couldn't answer that if you didn't know when it is going away from or towards the asymptote. So now let's go to question 8.1. It asks me to do the y-intercept. In other words, make x 0. 2 to the power of 0 is 1. So 3 times 1 is 3 minus 6 is -3. Okay? 8.2. Calculate the coordinates of the x-intercept. So I'll make y 0. But now this is an exponential equation. Therefore, I need to first of all isolate the 2 to the power of x. Then, after I've isolated the 2 to the power of x, I need to make my bases the same. Fortunately, they already are, so I can just read off my exponents must also be the same, so x must be 1. So when we look now at question 8.3, which is sketch the graph of f, first of all, I need my x and my y values, my axes, Then I'm going to put in my asymptote, y equal to -6. I'm going to insert my intercepts with the axes, which is at -3 and at 1. Remember, it's 2 different sets of coordinates. Okay, please remember that. And then I'm going to sketch my graph. And yes, it does go away from my asymptote, so I know my graph is right. Okay? Last and not least, write down the range of y. So in other words, let me just take this step by step. If I look at this at 8.4, Y is an element of. In other words, what's the lowest Y value that this graph can be? Well, it doesn't go below -6, so -6 is in there. What is the highest Y value that my graph will reach? Infinity. But now the question is, does the graph touch -6? No. Does the graph touch infinity? No. So both of them have to have round brackets. If it could touch -6, I would have put a square bracket in. I love interval notation simply because it always reminds me that I have to have a lowest Y value and I have to have a highest Y value. Okay? Pretty much simple and straightforward, ladies and gentlemen. Let's quickly now have a look at the next question. But so there is no next question. Yes, there is. This I got from the Department of the Eastern Cape Department of Education. I think it was the 2021 paper. I think so. But this is a beautiful question. A lot more how I would ask it in the exam. So not straightforward, but with a little bit of a bite in this, in the tail there. Bite in a stinger in the tail there. So I'm going to ask you, hit the pause button on your video and try this one yourself and then look at how I answer it. Let's again take question 7.1 and just analyze the question. First of all, my asymptote. Okay, my asymptote is again y equal to -4. And now I need to look at the shape of the graph. First of all, there's a positive in front of that half, okay? Which means, again, if I've got my asymptote, my graph is going to lie above my asymptote. But now this half, very important. The half is between 0 and 1. Therefore, my graph has to slope towards my asymptote. It converges. Okay, I'm throwing out these words. You might look at me and go, sir, do I really have to know this? Actually, yes, you do. Because in matric, in sequences and series, we are going to throw out words like converge, because exponential series, which in matric is actually going to be called geometric series, are going to converge when that base is smaller than 1, okay? But of course, it's going to be a whole bigger discussion in matric, okay? But for now, it's between 0 and 1 for functions. My graph is going to slope down, okay? Or not, let me rather rephrase. Not sloping down, going to go towards my asymptote, okay? Towards or away, that's your choice. Okay, let me go on to the actual questions. So let's look at 7.1.1. I've already answered it. Write down the equation of the asymptotes. 1 mark in the bank. 7.1.2. Write down the range of G. Remember that the graph lies above my asymptote. So it's going to be from -4 to infinity, because it's above -4. Does my graph touch the asymptote? No. Does it touch infinity? Never. So it's both round brackets. Now 7.1.3. Determine the coordinates of the x and the y-intercept. So let's start with the easy one. The y-intercept. Make x 0. What's my value there? Well, -3. So in other words, my graph is, let me just write it as a set of coordinates, 0, -3. Okay, let's carry on to the x-intercept. I'm going to go through the motions again. It's an exponential equation, so I need to isolate the half to the x. So I'm going to take the negative 4 to the left-hand side. I'm going to make my bases the same. Remember that a half is 2 to the negative 1. So therefore negative x is 2 and x is therefore negative 2. So what is my x-intercept? Negative 2, comma 0. Now I'm actually going to sketch this question, okay, even though it's not asked, because in 7.1.4, okay, for me to answer this, I need to know where are the y values smaller than 0. Now, I'm not going to try and reason this out in my head. I can, just because I'm awesome like that, but actually because I'm visualizing it in my head. So let me take it out of my head and put it on the piece of paper, okay? So let's start by getting my x and my y axes, getting my x and my y-intercept, drawing it with my asymptote, y equal to negative 4. And as you see, the graph is sloping towards my asymptote. It's going towards the asymptote. Now, where are the y values negative? Okay, remember, it's that part there because y values being positive is above the x-axis and negative is below the x-axis. So if I want to answer this question, it is going to be from negative 2 to infinity. That's where my x values, for which my y values are smaller than 0. Does it say equal to? No, so I'm going to say round brackets, all round, okay? Because again, it cannot be equal to 0 because of just being smaller than 0. Okay, now we get to the last question, which is one of my all-time favorites. My students at the school would call this question a Mr. VG special. This is not necessarily because it is an immensely difficult question, but simply because it's maybe asked in a way you're not used to it. You've got to know your stuff to answer this question. So what do I know? Let's start with the a being negative 1, okay? That means if I've got my asymptote, that a value is in front of the exponential part. So in other words, it lies below the axis, or not the axis, the asymptote, okay? So that is what the a equal to negative 1 is telling me. Then it says there that b lies between 0 and 1, which means it converges. So it's going to go towards my asymptote. Look at this. Even though, okay, it's increasing towards the asymptote. Again, converging like we said in the previous one. Now, what does the q value tell me of the graph? Well, that is the asymptote. So if I sketch my set of axes, first of all, let's start at the asymptote. Q is greater than 1. So it's definitely going to be above the x-axis. That is something that they were looking for. Okay? So Q is greater than 1. We don't know what it is, but it could be 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't know. It's got to lie below the asymptote and slope towards it. So it's going to look something like that. Do I know where it passes through the x and the y axis? No, I don't. Okay. But they won't give you marks for it. Remember, it's 3 marks. So 1 mark will be for your asymptote being above the x-axis. 1 mark will be for your lying below your graph lying below the asymptote. The second or the third mark, sorry, I'm getting confused now. The third mark, the last mark, is for shaping towards the asymptote. That is where the marks would be given here. This could be actually a 4-mark question, but 3 marks is perfect. Perfect. Wow. I hope that the one thing you take out of this question is you have to know your theory, ladies and gents. You cannot answer functions and graphs without knowing your theory. So go and draw up a 1-pager for every one of your graphs with little sketches and everything, where you summarize every type of graph before you go and attempt the questions. Ladies and gents, it's been so much fun sharing my love, my passion for functions and graphs, because everything goes back to functions and graphs. We love it. We love it. I hope you're going to learn to love it as well. So this is Mr. VG signing out. Have a gorgeous, amazing, and beautiful evening. Keep well. Cheers.